how should you plan for when your home becomes too small? Or when the next one gets too big? At Sandy Spring Bank, we're here to help create personalized solutions for financing your home loan. Whether it's a new home or refinance, renovation or addition, fixer-upper or new build. Banking is a conversation. Let's talk about your mortgage. Visit sandyspringbank.com/mortgage. Mortgage, home equity, and other credit products offered by Sandy Spring Bank, Equal Housing Lender.
Hola, ¿qué tal? It's Chiquis here with a brand new podcast. That's right. It's called Chiquis and Chill. It's a fun, tranquilo space for us to have honest conversations on everything from music, health, beauty, sex, social media, and so much more. I'm opening up de todo corazón so you can really get to know me. Así que acompáñame every Monday starting November 8th and listen to Chiquis and Chill on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hey, I'm Lilia Luciano, the host of El Flow, a podcast about reggaeton. In this podcast, we're going to hear from iconic reggaeton artists and take you backstage into all the conflict and drama that helped shape reggaeton. It's a story that includes war, drugs, censorship, sex, of course, perreo, my grandmother, and hell, even the CIA. Listen to El Flow on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is Pro Football Blitz with former Super Contest winners Brady Cannon and James Salinas on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
It is the Pro Football Blitz. Brady Cannon and James Salinas with you. I'm live at the Circa Resort and Casino in downtown Las Vegas. James joins the program via Denver, Colorado, keeping an eye on Sunday Night Football. Still 7-0 in favor of the Minnesota Vikings, and Cooper Rush just had his first mistake of the ballgame. Threw it to the wrong team. Interception for the Minnesota Vikings. It looks like they're still in their own territory, James. They went to commercial here, but I believe Minnesota will start around their own 40-yard line. Still 7-0 Minnesota out in front. They are 7.5-point favorites in the live market, 45.5 for the in-game total, and you're looking pretty good so far on under 24.5 for your team total for the Dallas Cowboys. In the last segment, we were recapping the Panthers and the Atlanta Falcons game, and just want to tell you what they have coming up in Week 9. The Panthers will return home next week to host the Patriots, and Christian McCaffrey is eligible to come off of IR for that game. It was made a pick'em over the summer. The Falcons are on the road to face the Saints in New Orleans, and the earliest line released on that one was the Saints -6. James, the Philadelphia Eagles were on the roads as favorites in Detroit, laying 3.5 points for the better part of the week. And then late this morning, it was really all week long, we saw the majority of the tickets on the Detroit Lions, and then that line got down to 3 this morning prior to kickoff. And I tell you what, man, this game was over quickly. It was 17-0 at halftime, and then the Philadelphia Eagles outscored Detroit 21-0 in the third quarter alone, 44-6 your final. And you look at that Lions effort last week against the Rams, where they pulled out all the possible stops. And then they go into today's game and you watch that effort. It looked like they just had nothing left, that they were out of gas.
Well, and think about how many, not just last week, but how many other tough losses have they suffered this year. Think about early in the season. They basically had the Baltimore Ravens beat, if not for a Justin Tucker record-breaking field goal from 66 yards. Lose that football game. Same thing on the road a couple weeks later, playing at Minnesota. They have that game. They have the lead with less than 30 seconds. Can't close that out. And then an opportunity, not that they had the lead late against the Rams, but had an opportunity to take the lead late in the fourth quarter. And yeah, I think just psychologically and emotionally, it just takes a toll, Brady. When you're a competitor and you're fighting, you're putting everything out there, and you're coming up, you're competing, you're getting so close, especially as an underdog. And we know that when you're just looking on paper for the Lions, there's not too many other teams that they're going to match up where, if any teams, you're going to look at their roster and say, yeah, there's a better roster here with the Lions than their opponent. But I think it just wears on you. And it was bound to happen at some point for the Detroit Lions. And ultimately, that was the other side for the Philadelphia Eagles. What we haven't seen from the Eagles is what exactly we saw today, and wondering when were they going to start to run the football, aside from Jalen Hurts constantly being their leading rusher, kind of a one-read quarterback, tuck it and run. That's what it's been up to up until this game against Detroit. Today, 46 rushes, and actually, let's just call it 39 rushes that didn't include Jalen Hurts. We haven't seen that all season long. I guess finally the coaches started to look at film and say, we can't just have Jalen Hurts dropping back play after play after play, and we don't want him to be our leading rusher week after week. We've got to commit to the running game, and with no Miles Sanders, whether it was Boston Scott, Jordan Howard, even Kenneth Gainwell got involved, a lot of carries to go around. That's where they pounded the football. 46 rushes today for the Philadelphia Eagles, 236 yards, far eclipsing whatever they've done. That sounded like pretty much the majority of their rushes from the running backs all season long, encapsulated today in this matchup here. So got back to the running game, finding some balance, not having to put it all on Jalen Hurts' shoulders to try to throw it and or run the football.
Yeah, no, absolutely. The Boston Scott show was very impressive, and you mentioned Jordan Howard. He got involved as well. It was a nice effort by Philadelphia, obviously putting 44 points up on the board and having that balance. You and I have always been kind of confused by what team Philadelphia really is, and I think today maybe said more about the Lions, and I think your assessment there was spot on. It wasn't just, throwing the kitchen sink at the Rams last week that had them exhausted. They've really been through the ringer all season long. Anytime you lose 7 games in a row, and some of their games have been just heartbreakers. So I think you're right. It was overall fatigue over all of those 7 games, not just necessarily last week against the Rams. That was kind of maybe the icing on the cake, that effort against the Rams, but it certainly showed up today. Would you agree with that, James, that you're still not really able to figure out this Philadelphia team, but maybe we learned that this Lions team absolutely is in need of a break? They'll go to their bye week next week.
For the Lions, heart, that team has plenty of heart. They've been playing hard through the first half of the season, through the first 7 games for the most part. All losses, and obviously today just a no-show. I think it does. It just takes a toll and just wears you down when you're so competitive. And your competitors, they're professional athletes. There's a reason why. Plus, these are guys that there's no expectation for them, so they want to prove themselves that they can play as individuals, that they can play in this league, as well as we can play collectively as a team, and we can compete. We're right there. We're just a field goal here and a field goal there and an interception here or there from being maybe a 3-4 team going into this game, and then it just wears you down. So I think from the Detroit Lions standpoint, this is you think about when the bye week come for certain teams, and if you're on a roll, you don't want the bye week to come. But if you're whether it's physically, you got a lot of guys on injured reserve, or you got a lot of guys banged up and having to lick their wounds, or in this case here, just the mental fatigue of losing the way that they have. Good break for the Lions to get their bye week going, and then the Philadelphia side, able to take advantage of the emotional state of the Detroit Lions. But I still don't know. Philadelphia, this is finally they've decided we got to run the football here, and based on the opponent, you can do that against the Detroit Lions, but I still just don't have a good handle on this Philadelphia Eagles team, and Jalen Hurts throwing the football is not somebody that I trust at this point.
The Eagles moved to 3-5 on the season. Detroit remains winless, of course, at 0-8. The Eagles were returned home to host the Chargers in Week 9. LA was installed as a 2-point favorite back in June for this one. That'll be a very interesting game there. Of course, the Chargers had trouble with New England today, and we'll see if they can give some trouble to Philadelphia when they go on the road in Week 9. The Lions will indeed take their bye week next week, and as James and I explained, I'm sure they can really use that. They will need to refresh and recharge after starting the season 0-8. Tennessee at Indianapolis, James, what a ball game, and of course it needed overtime to be decided. And of course, that was probably expected because we saw this line flip back and forth. We just couldn't decide who was going to be the favorite in this game. Finally, it settles in on the Colts side, and by the time we got to kickoff, they were a 3-point favorite, was Indianapolis. Carson Wentz, late in the game, he's nearly sacked in his own end zone, less than 2 minutes left, and rather than sacked, he tries to flip it. It's intercepted, and it's a 2-yard pick six into the end zone for the Titans, and it looked like that was going to do it, but the Colts, very resilient, they come back the other way and tie the ball game up with 20 seconds left in regulation. Now they go to overtime, back and forth possessions, and then Wentz throws another interception in the extra session. Titans kicker Randy Bullock knocks home a game winner from 45 yards away. Final score 34-31, an absolute wild one and an absolute sweatbox if you were involved on either side here, James.
Carson Wentz doing Carson Wentz things. You talked about the throwing it up for grabs, just trying to he was voiding the sack, which would have been a safety at that point late in the game. And not only did he just throw it up and try to just dump it off, he threw it with his left hand, trying to impersonate Patrick Mahomes, I suppose. But yeah, partner, not the kind of talent that we see out of Patty Mahomes that you got there with Carson Wentz. And then, he rallies them to get some big plays. They had a big PI call down the field late in that last drive, too, that really set them up for that touchdown. But thinking about the defensive side, where's the defense? Neither of these defenses when it's crunch time, Tennessee, you just got that pick six. This is your opportunity to put a stranglehold in this game, and you're going to allow that to happen for Carson Wentz to be able to come back. And I know you got the pick in overtime and were able to finish it, but I don't trust either of these teams, Brady. Yeah, now it's basically Tennessee in that AFC South. They have the tiebreaker now on the Colts, having swept them head-to-head. They've got a 3-game lead in the standings, essentially a 4-game lead because of the tiebreak. Yeah, well, is Tennessee a team that I want to trust? Derrick Henry got kind of bottled up by the Titans or by the Colts defense and stacking that box up there and making Tannehill. Tannehill didn't play the greatest game either. Some poor decisions, interception as well early in that game, and just kind of a weird game today. I mean, the Colts got up to a 14-0 lead, had all the momentum. You give the ball away, and all of a sudden now it's 14-14. It's a tie game, 17-14 going into halftime, Brady. Neither of these teams right now, especially on the defensive side and at the quarterback position, are teams that I feel like I can trust. But now with the Indianapolis Colts, we talk about trusting them going into the second half of the season. Then when they get to the playoffs, trusting them to be able to compete and perform in the playoffs. At this point here, that was a devastating loss for the Colts, because I think within that, the only team coming out of that going into the playoffs from the AFC South has to be the division winner. And right now, obviously, the stranglehold is with the Titans.
No, you're absolutely right. That was a huge loss for the Indianapolis Colts and their postseason hopes. And you and I were talking about it for the last couple of weeks on the program, James, when the Colts started to kind of put things together and had some positive momentum going. We were looking at that price to win the division. The Colts were anywhere from 3 or 4 to 1 to win the AFC South. And we were thinking, well, you know what? That's not a bad price. But today, I'm hoping you didn't make a bet on that, because now that ticket is basically a torn ticket with Tennessee. Like you say, they've beaten the next closest competitor in that division now twice in the Indianapolis Colts, so they have that advantage, and off and running with a 3-game lead as well over Indianapolis. So absolutely the Titans in the driver's seat in that division. The Colts will be on a short week. They will face the New York Jets in Indy on Thursday Night Football. They were made an 8.5-point favorite in that one over the summer at the Westgate. The Titans are on the road for a second straight week. This time they are visiting the Los Angeles Rams, and that game should really be a dandy with the LA Rams hosting the Tennessee Titans. We'll come back with more of the Pro Football Blitz in just a moment. Stick with us. It's VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
Good afternoon. Would you like to try a free sample of our double fudge brownie?
Oh, sure. That's very good. I'll just take one more, just to be sure. Yep, still very good.
Some things never change, like never being able to take just one free sample. And Geico saving folks lots of money on their car insurance.
Is that macadamia nut I taste? Let me take one more.
Sir?
Yeah, I thought so.
15 minutes could save you 15% or more.
I want to get back to being in my community group.
I want to continue having a soccer season.
So I can throw parties again.
So I can go to her parties.
It'd really be nice to dine in instead of getting delivery for a change.
So I can feel safe and protected for myself and my students.
We each have our own reason for why we're getting vaccinated against COVID-19. What will yours be? Visit GetVaccineAnswers.org for information on the COVID-19 vaccines. It's up to you. Brought to you by the Ad Council.
Hi, I'm Sam Rappaport, host of Earnin' It, a new podcast featuring women breaking the NFL's glass ceilings from the field to the front office. I'm a former professional quarterback who dreamed of creating a pipeline to bring smart football minds into the game.
I went to Darcy and said, look, I'd like to hire 2 coaches who happen to be female. She said, heck yeah, go for it.
It's not like I'm doing this to bust up the good old boys club.
They just happen to be women.
When you're looking to hire the best people, maybe if you're opening up the pool to everybody, you're getting even more exceptional people.
This story will be told by NFL head coaches, owners, and of course, the women themselves. And we'll even go deep with Commissioner Roger Goodell. Jane emailed the whole iHeart team being like, Sam wants to know if she could curse. I'm like, I'm a football player.
I didn't curse once, did I?
Listen to Earnin' It, the NFL's Forward Progress, starting November 9th on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is the Pro Football Blitz with Brady Cannon and James Salinas on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
Make this football season your best sports betting season ever. Start your VSiN free trial today to get full access to our sports betting experts, including 24/7 video streaming, daily best bet emails, betting splits with the money and ticket percentages on every game, plus full access to VSiN.com data and analysis. You get everything VSiN has to offer for only $22 per month. Sign up now at VSiN.com/subscribe. The Minnesota Vikings and Dallas Cowboys serving up this week's edition of Sunday Night Football. And Dallas is on the move as far as your live line. The Minnesota Vikings now down to 4.5-point favorites in the live market. That's about where they closed prior to kickoff. Your total has come crashing down, just 40.5 now in the live market, as Dallas has about 6 minutes left before halftime here. Facing fourth down, it looks like they'll bring out Greg the Leg again to try another field goal and make this a 7-3 ball game. James, you and I were talking about Tennessee and the Colts in the last segment. Also, T.Y. Hilton, Indianapolis receiver, goes out of this game again with injury, this time a concussion. This guy has really had some hard luck for what seems like the past couple of seasons with injury, and the Colts could have really used him down the stretch. It seems like their best long ball threat has been pass interference. They did it a few times to the San Francisco 49ers and did it a couple times there to the Tennessee Titans earlier today as well, as Greg Zuerlein's field goal is good for Dallas. A 7-3 game now. Minnesota out in front. And with a field goal, the odds makers, they know what they're doing. Kicking is for losers. They move the number up on the Minnesota Vikings as far as the live line goes, from 4.5 to -5.5 on Minnesota in the live market. 41.5 your live total. The Houston Texans made it interesting for a while against the Los Angeles Rams. Not really. But if you're looking at the number, pretty tough beat. If you had the Rams laying 16.5 here, which was the closing number, James, Houston, they scored all 22 of their points in the final quarter. The Rams were up 38-0 as 16.5-point favorites, and Houston sneaks in the back door with 22 unanswered in the final frame. Now, Rams survivor backers, they advance with very little sweat, if any, but if you played the spread, pretty crazy fourth quarter. In the end, though, James, this Texans team still is really awful.
Yeah, thinking about were they even, this team, the backdoor lever cover, could they get that done? They hadn't been doing it because they haven't been putting any points on the board. The previous two games, collective 6 points scored, 2 field goals, 1 in each game for the Houston Texans. And obviously the Rams took the foot off the gas, being up 38-0 rolling into the fourth quarter. They could care less whether they're covering these big numbers. It's handle your business, move on the next week, get out of these games healthy. And yeah, it really was a sweat because not only did they get to 16, but they had an opportunity. They threw it into the end zone, last gasp desperation heave. Not only whether it's 15.5, 16, 16.5, depending on wherever that number was, but also beating all those numbers on a last second. They were roughly, I think they got around the 30-yard line, but it was just garbage time and garbage stats, garbage points coming out of the Houston Texans, and that's pretty much what they are. It sums up their season. Garbage time is really what they've been playing for most of these games. Had a couple competitive games, but for the most part, Texans just a team that, they've traded off talent. They're completely in rebuild mode, and you're going to see this continuously. I guess if that's one thing to take away from the Texans game is they still fought, and you saw them. I had that game on one of the TVs here, and you could still see the effort and the energy coming out of them. They just don't have the talent to be able to forget about one quarter, even a half together. 4 quarters, too much to ask for the Texans to be able to compete. So looking at those numbers, I think they're just going to continue to climb and climb and climb based on their opponent. We're going to see plenty of big double-digit favorites playing the Texans for the rest of the season.
Yeah, and I think they're really hamstrung with Davis Mills at quarterback. This guy was pretty darn good in college, and a lot of people had high hopes for him in the NFL. And obviously, this is just his rookie season. He's got a whole career ahead of him, but he struggled again today against that Rams defense, that Rams pass rush. Tyrod Taylor was possible to come back in this game. We'll see if he comes back next week for the Houston Texans, where they will visit the Miami Dolphins. And I know you already have your TV set to watch that one, James, the Houston Texans and the Miami Dolphins in Week 9. The Rams return home to host the Titans, and we mentioned this one in the last segment when we were covering the Titans game. This one really should be good. Los Angeles was made a 5.5-point favorite over the summer, and, of course, they will be at home in Los Angeles, the Titans on the road. Rams by 5.5. Again, this was made over the summer, way back in May or June or whatever it was. But I think that line could be pretty close. I could see the Rams somewhere in the neighborhood of 5-6 point favorites over Tennessee next week, James.
Thinking about how the Rams, where their strengths are versus the Tennessee Titans' weakness. Now, Tennessee's been able to get after the quarterback better the last few weeks, but you can throw on that football team. You can make plays in that against that Tennessee secondary. And we were talking about Cooper Kupp earlier, potential offensive player of the year candidate just based on the season he's having. He's not the only one out there. The Rams are starting to find, with new quarterback coming over with Stafford, and I think for Sean McVay to be able to expand his playbook, how it was really limited over the last few years with Jared Goff. They're starting to open it up and find it every week in and week out now. Don't want to take too much away from this Texans matchup when putting up 38 points in the first 3 quarters. A lot of teams are going to do that against this Texans team. But, yeah, big showdown here. But thinking about the Titans, this is the non-conference game for the Titans going to play the Rams here, and they know they have a stranglehold on their division, the AFC South. And we saw Derrick Henry, he finished out the game, but he got kind of nicked up, had an ankle injury, a foot injury early in that game in the first half. Really wasn't the same powerful Derrick Henry that we've seen all season long. I would think early assessment for me, I'm leaning towards the Rams in that matchup.
The Cincinnati Bengals and the New York Jets. Oh my, James, this was quite a game. You and I talked about this one on the Pro Football Blitz on Saturday, and absolutely, the Bengals should have gone in and won this game. They could have gone in and won this game easily, but we hated the spot. It was an absolutely awful spot. They had just had a historic win over the Baltimore Ravens, and then up next, they have another division opponent in the Cleveland Browns. They also went from that scenario that is not a good recipe of going from an underdog that wins outright to a road favorite. Not only were they a road favorite, they were a double-digit road favorite. And it's Jets, Jets, Jets win it outright as 11.5-point underdogs, knocking off the number 1 seed in the AFC, 34-31, your final score. And this, James, was also the most popular pick in Circa Survivor. 871 entries go by the wayside, along with the Cincinnati Bengals.
Well, you could put 2 of my entries into that. That went down in flames with the Cincinnati Bengals. And yeah, we did talk about that, Brady, and everything looking at that matchup, everything spelled you got to take the Bengals here, whether you're not so much laying that big number, 10.5, wherever that number ended up closing at if you were taking that favorite, but more so thinking about the Survivor side, just win, survive, and advance for these teams. But the scheduling spot, if you're thinking about, and you look at the NFL, and I know there's now 17 games as opposed to the normal 16 games, if you think these teams come and bring the same effort week in and week out, all you got to do is look at that game today. That was my concern going in with it, and figured, all right, well, if you're looking to bet the Bengals in this game, I wouldn't bet them before the game started. See how they come out, because I suspected, they're probably going to be a little flat and then come in at halftime, regroup themselves, and go out and handle their business, kind of similar to what happened in Week 4 on that short week Thursday night at home playing the Jacksonville Jaguars, where they went down 14-0 at halftime and dominated the second half to come out with the win. Not a cover, but a win, survive and advance. But young Bengals team here, and they had the opportunity. They're up 31-20 second half, in that fourth quarter with just a handful of minutes to go, bad interception for Joe Burrow. And it was really, the flat effort on both sides of the football for the Cincinnati Bengals. But then, we can. I don't want to get into too much debate about what's happening in the NFL when we're talking about player safety and wanting to hit people in the head and helmet-to-helmet contact and all that. But there was a big helmet-to-helmet contact. There was what you call it, unnecessary roughness, or he was being mean to the offensive player is basically what the flag was, saying that he hit him in the head. Well, he lowered his shoulder. It was the receiver that lowered his head and hit the defender in the helmet-to-helmet contact. If anything, it should have went on the receiver. That was a third down play. Burrow would have got the ball back with roughly 2 minutes to go, all 3 timeouts, down 3. I'm not saying that's why they lost. They lost because they didn't bring the effort for a full 4 quarters, and an interception late in that fourth quarter really cost the Cincinnati Bengals. That is Joe Burrow. But the fact that we just keep seeing these flags out there, they talk about player safety and trying to keep these guys healthy. You know what? Player safety starts with, if you're concerned about your safety, you don't have to play. This is a voluntary activity. We're just what we're having is just really soft football continuing in favor of the offense, and that definitely impacted what happened late in that game.
I didn't know you had 2 of your 3 remaining entries on the Bengals. I thought you were in the clear there. Who's your other one on?
I had the Rams as the other one, so we're down, and now we're down to 1. So
and then there was one
time now.
All right, well, good.
I
am sorry to hear that you were one of the 871 entries, about 41% of the survivor pool, all of a sudden out in Week 8. The Chiefs have 734 entries on them in the Monday Nighter. Also, the Chargers took out 38 people. The Falcons took out another 13 people in Circa Survivor. We'll be back in just a moment with more of the Pro Football Blitz.
This is the Pro Football Blitz with Brady Cannon and James Salinas on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
We have some great news for our Colorado-based VSiN fans. We've partnered with Altitude Sports Radio, and starting Monday, all your favorite VSiN shows, including this one, the Pro Football Blitz, can be heard live on Altitude Radio 950 AM in Denver, Colorado. We are really excited about this partnership that brings VSiN to a great sports city with a growing audience of sports bettors. Tune in to hear all the VSiN shows live on Altitude Radio 950 AM in Denver, again, starting on Monday. Fired up to be on Altitude Radio in your neck of the woods. Mr. Salinas, Brady Cannon, and James Salinas inside the Pro Football Blitz, keeping an eye on Sunday Night Football. Cowboys doing a pretty good job defending the Minnesota Vikings. They are forcing a field goal attempt here, and that is on the way and through the wickets. Now 10-3 in favor of the Minnesota Vikings in this game. They are 5.5-point favorites in the live line. That's pretty much, a field goal does not change the live line too much, James. In fact, we saw it go up in favor of Minnesota when Dallas kicked one earlier. They remain 5.5-point favorites in the live market here. The total at 40.5, so still very low scoring expected the way this game is going currently. About 2 minutes left to go in the first half. James, in this segment, I want to grade our best bets and also talk about the Circa Millions and or the Westgate Super Contest. I don't know if you still have any action in this game or on Monday night as far as contest plays, but what kind of start did you get off to today anyway?
Let's see. I do have the Vikings plus. Was it plus 1.5? I think was the number in these. Yeah, so I do have the Vikings. They're just like most of the contest players, and that was really what was going to happen with Dak. When you see that drastic line move, had to anticipate that Dak was not going to play, and obviously he's not out there on the field. So I do have that one going tonight. Thinking about I have multiple entries and multiple contests, so thinking about maybe consensus-wise, I was on the Bears today, consensus with all those picks, and they were competing for the first 3 quarters, but I think that defense just wore down in that fourth quarter and just could not stop Garoppolo and company. Garoppolo had a pretty big day, especially running the football. He ran in 2 touchdowns in that second half, I think, for the San Francisco 49ers. One of the bigger games that I was looking forward to from just a physicality standpoint, I did have the Pittsburgh Steelers plus the 4.5, whatever that number was. I bet them myself, too, at plus 4.5, and 15-10 was that total. And I think we really saw we've seen it through for Baker Mayfield, yeah, he's got that. I know his shoulder is not his throwing shoulder that is hurt, but he's wearing this really bulky harness that it really impacts the torque that he has and the range of motion that he has with his torso throwing the football. And again, another tough day throwing the football with any accuracy for Baker Mayfield, and not much of a running game today. Great performance, defensive performance. Old school performance out of the Pittsburgh Steelers today. So that was definitely one that not only came through consensus wise on the for my multiple contest picks, but also a good bet for me with the Pittsburgh Steelers. I didn't have them to win the game outright. I had the plus the points, but really a battle in the AFC North. Great battle today. Pittsburgh victorious.
Well, the consensus picks in the Circa Millions right now is at 1-3 with the Vikings pending. The Patriots, the only winner as far as the top 5 most popular picks in the Circa consensus. The Bengals, of course, going down, the Lions going down, and the Colts going down. There was one difference in the Westgate Super Contest consensus. One of their top 5 most popular picks was the Buffalo Bills, and a big difference there was Circa had the Bills at -14. The Westgate had them at -13.5. That, of course, is a winner. They also had the Lions for a loser, a Patriots for the winner, and the Colts for a loser with the Vikings pending. So it looks like the Westgate, the Westgate could go 3-2 on the consensus. The best the Circa Million consensus can do is 2-3. And James, I got to pat myself on the back. My best bets here on the program, I went 3-0, and in the Circa Millions contest, I went 5-0. Had the Seattle Seahawks. Nice. Yeah, you got to love a 5-0, man. Had the Seattle Seahawks, the Denver Broncos, the Carolina Panthers, the Buffalo Bills, and the New Orleans Saints. And we'll get to all of those breakdowns throughout the program. But the money line parlay that I had here as a part of our best bet program on the Pro Football Blitz had the Eagles -175 paired with the Broncos. Boy, that Broncos one got scary there at the end. Boy, your boy Melvin Gordon, man, trying to give me a heart attack, but they both get into the win column, so that little 2-team money line parlay cashes, and then so does the teaser. We talked about this one on Saturday's show, the Carolina Panthers up to +9, and then the Tennessee Titans up to +8.5. I know you really like that leg, the Titans getting better than 8 points.
Yeah, both those. Well, they both won the game outright. And the thing about the Panther side, it was all the defense. We didn't see anything. We've seen what we've seen consistently out of that offense recently for the Carolina Panthers, with Sam Darnold just struggling and got knocked out of the game with a concussion. But defensively, they held their own and won that football. That's really what won the football game for them, was the defensive side. And then for Tennessee, figuring this was a huge divisional game in that AFC South, and for Tennessee, just to keep it, we looking at it like a field goal game. So you get through the 3, through the 7, through the 6, through the 7, and even through the 8, because I know you had, 8.5 in that game, I think it was?
Yeah,
so
8.5.
Great teaser. Like, that's when you're thinking about teasers in a close game like that. Yeah, that game was a toss-up either which way, and it finished up in overtime with Carson Wentz and another turnover from Wentz. But, yeah, I think for the Tennessee Titans now going forward, I'm just more so thinking about the Titans defensively. Yeah, that was kind of a struggle in their pass defense. But where do the Colts go from here, Brady? The season is now sitting where they're at, 3-5. You're out of the division race for the most part, unless it's a total collapse from the Tennessee Titans in this second half. Colts, high expectations coming into this season, bringing on Carson Wentz at the quarterback position behind that offensive line, even though they got banged up before the season started. Now where do the Colts go from here? I think that's going to be a team that we'll see if that team stays together. We'll see if that team is able to galvanize themselves. Where's the leadership coming from, whether it's from Frank Wright or is Carson Wentz somebody that this team wants to hook its horses to lead them to try to compete for the second half? I don't know. This is the team that right now, for me, the Colts are going to be looking for somebody. That's a team that I'm going to be looking to fade.
You were on the over in the Washington-Denver game, James, and that was a fairly low total for today's NFL at just 44, and you certainly made a good case for that on the program. But, it's 2 games in a row now where, and maybe not so much against the Green Bay Packers, but I think more so today against obviously probably a weaker offense in the Denver Broncos. But finally, that Washington defense is starting to show up a little bit. Now, today, the big problem was their offense.
Thinking about their offense, their first drive of the game, they marched right down the field, have an opportunity. It's they go for it 4th and 1, right around somewhere, right outside the red zone, maybe around the 20-yard line. They were running the football, moving the chains, moving the sticks, and instead, let's do a boot and let's roll out to the side. I think these coaches, we talked about the coaching staff for both of these teams. The disconnect there, and maybe the shift when it comes to the thinking of where football is in come 2021. And we've got groups and coaches here that were coaching, whether they were coaching back in the NFL back in the 80s, like Vic Fangio was, linebacker coach there with the New Orleans Saints and the Dome Patrol, or Jack Del Rio, linebacker back in the 80s, as well as Ron Rivera from the Super Bowl champion Chicago Bears. But, Brady, they're still stuck in their ways, and I think they try to figure out ways to catch up with the new young guns and just run the football. If you're going to go for it on 4th down, think about where you're at, and it's really just set the tone, because then it just became an ugly game both sides. It wasn't that either of these teams, to me, it wasn't a great game out of Washington defensively either. I just feel like more so, I just don't know where the Broncos are going. They're running when they should be throwing, and they're throwing when they should be running. I think both these coaches, I don't know if either of these coaching staffs are going to last come the end of the season. I think they're both going to be gone once the season's concluded.
Yeah, that's interesting. I wonder about Rivera, because he has also done so much, not necessarily on the field, but it seems like he's had real positive change within that organization. And you make a lot of good points about not being able to adjust and the disconnect. I do think Ron Rivera is a really good leader of people, and I think he's shown that ability to have that charisma, which certainly a head coach needs as well. But Fangio, I'm almost surprised it didn't happen earlier with Vic Fangio, James, and then he gets out to a 3-0 start this year. Now, he saved his job certainly for a while here with a win today after having lost 4 straight, but their season win total, James, was 8.5. Do you think they're going to get over that at this point? And if they do, I would say he probably keeps his job.
That would be the only way. And yeah, if you're looking to try thinking about the Washington football team, that franchise still has going through a lot of issues. They've been going through a lot of issues off the field for the last few years. So definitely a dysfunctional culture there from the front office on down. So potentially, but this is not a football team that you can trust to win football games. Going over that win total, 8.5, I don't know if they're going to get over 5.
So it doesn't sound like you're ready to jump on betting the Denver Broncos even in Week 9. We'll get back to our recaps of all the games that went down here in Week 8 on the Pro Football Blitz when we return. Also, the Minnesota Vikings back on offense again. Just about 30 seconds left in the first half. They lead 10-3 over Dallas. They are 6.5-point favorites in the live market. We'll be right back on the Pro Football Blitz.
This is Logan Ryan, captain of the New York Giants and host of the NFL Player Podcast. We're trying something different. An active NFL player hosting a podcast, which is for NFL players and legends as much as it's for the fans. This is my first podcast, and I'm pretty excited about it. We're going to talk football, but also about lots of other issues that affects us all. We'll be talking with other players and legends, so it's going to be real and an honest look at life in the NFL.
Listen to the NFL Players Podcast on the iHeartRadio app or wherever you get your podcasts.
Does your inner monologue ever sound like, ugh, I'm never going to be good enough or thin enough, or I'm too old to start something new?
Those are all lies designed by culture and negative forces to keep you small.
These are what I call dominant stories, the stories we tell ourselves about ourselves. I'm Jess Weiner, cultural expert and the host of Dominant Stories. On this show, I talk with some of your favorite celebrities, storytellers, and experts about their beauty, body image, and identity.
They don't want you to thrive. They don't want you to spread your wings. It's an act of rebellion for us to take up the space that is ours.
Within these curious and revealing conversations, you'll also find a way to challenge and change your dominant stories. Listen to Dominant Stories with me, Jess Weiner, on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts.
Need more football in your life? Look no further than the Good Morning Football podcast. Join me, Kay Adams, alongside Peter Schrager and Kyle Brandt for a daily breakdown of the league's biggest stories.
If you're looking for the secret ingredient that makes Patrick Mahomes so special, or which sitcom best describes the Cowboys season, this is the podcast for you. Between interviews with the stars of the NFL, previews of all the best matchups, and weekly fantasy advice, the GMFB podcast, it's your one-stop shop for all things football.
Whether you're a football fanatic or just a casual sports fan who enjoys a good laugh, make sure to listen to the Good Morning Football podcast every day on the iHeartRadio app or on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is the Pro Football Blitz with Brady Cannon and James Salinas on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
Welcome back. This segment of Pro Football Blitz is brought to you by Zyn Nicotine Pouches, a fresh way to enjoy nicotine without all the baggage of cigarettes, dip, or vape. No more smelling like an ashtray, no more spit cups, no more batteries to charge or leaky equipment to deal with. Zyn Nicotine Pouches are smoke-free, spit-free, and available in 10 varieties like spearmint, wintergreen, citrus, and many more. And for your convenience, each variety comes in 2 strengths, so you can easily find the satisfaction level that is perfect for you. Zyn, America's #1 nicotine pouch, is available at 100,000 locations nationwide, meaning it's never been easier to find your Zyn. So head over to zyn.com/find to locate a store near you. That's zyn.com/find. Welcome back to the Pro Football Blitz. Brady Cannon and James Salinas with you. Sunday Night Football, they have made their way to halftime, James, and wondering what your take is on this game. It's just 10-3 in favor of the Minnesota Vikings right now. A very slow-paced, a little bit sloppy first half of football. The Dallas defense is really keeping them in this game. Cooper Rush starting to look a little bit Cooper Rushy. A couple of passes there in the second quarter. That he's already thrown 1 interception. Now, that was a tipped ball, but nearly threw a couple more there in the second quarter. It looks like Minnesota knows that they're just going to try and lean on the running game. They've stacked the box, and really that pass rush that leads the league in 3.5 sacks per game. We have seen them put some pressure on Cooper Rush. That's really causing some of the problems there. Minnesota remains a 6.5-point favorite in the live market for the entire game. The entire game total all the way down to 36.5. Your halftime line is a pick'em as far as the side, and then as far as the total, it is 24. Now, again, I said Dallas is starting to look a little bit shaky, but they're only down by a touchdown. You wonder if they've still got a shot here, James.
Absolutely. You have Kirk Cousins on the other side in prime time, Brady. We know how
right.
There's going to be a turnover
You're
coming somewhere
right.
from Kirk Cousins. He's going to throw the ball to the wrong football team at some point. It's just a matter of on what side of the field does he do that, and how does that benefit the Cowboys offense? Yeah, not really moving the football. Cooper Rush, 10 out of 17, 110 yards. He does have that 1 interception from the first quarter when they were driving the football, but really not getting the running game going. Ezekiel Elliott, 10 carries, just 37 yards, but neither is the Minnesota Vikings. They're not running the football either. Dalvin Cook, 8 carries, just 23 yards, so just a tick under 3 yards per carry. So right now it's the Cowboys defense that's keeping them in it, and I wasn't sure what we were going to see out of the Minnesota offense, and that's where I didn't want to play the total for its entirety when you were talking about. We talked about it yesterday that all the moves going, and the line flipping from 2.5 in favor of the Cowboys to 3, and obviously once the news came out with Dak, it moved up to 4, and that's when the total started ticking. But I thought it was kind of curious that the line, the side, would move as drastically as it did, but really not much of an impact on the total. I figured we knew with Dak Prescott being out, that was going to be a major impact for this Dallas Cowboys offense, and that's where I just sided with just the under. The 24.5 is where it is, where I got it for the team total for the Cowboys. I just wasn't sure what we were going to see on the Minnesota Vikings side. I didn't expect that they were only going to get 10 points to this point, especially the fact that they're just not running the football. We talked about Dalvin Cook going less than 3 yards per carry. So Cowboys, I think if you're the Cowboys right now, Brady, and you're going in at halftime, really haven't done much offensively, not been able to move the ball with any consistency, and you're saying we're 1 score back right now, we've got a shot in this game. I think the confidence level right now, not only for the Cowboys, but in particular for Cooper Rush, a lot of pressure on him to have to fill in Dak Prescott's shoes. Hey, we're just 1 score from being in this game. We got a shot at this, and I think we'll see. If I was going to get involved, it'd be the Cowboys side, even though I don't love Cooper Rush in the spot. We haven't seen anything in the Vikings offensively to say, yeah, they're going to get it going. Really no consistency whatsoever from Minnesota. I like the Cowboys in the second half.
Yeah, I agree with you, and probably, it's really a reversal of roles in the Minnesota locker room. They're probably ticked off. It's like, guys, hey, you got a backup quarterback you're playing against here. We better get our act together. We're only up by a score. So I'm with you. I think if I was going to play the second half, I'd take Dallas in a pick-em affair. No real opinion on the total. Again, the second half total is at 24. Your live total for the entire game here now down to 36.5. James, you felt Cleveland and Pittsburgh was going to be a good old-fashioned AFC North physical football game, and you nailed that one, my friend. Great defense on both sides of the ball here. Ultimately, Pittsburgh gets it done 15-10. They get to the right side of 500. They're now 4-3 on the year. The Browns slipped to 500, now at 4-4 on the year. And Pittsburgh got it done as 5-point underdogs, winning outright. Game stays well under the total, which closed at 43.
Thinking about Baker Mayfield, he's not healthy. We know that he's not going to be healthy for the remainder of the season. He's going to have off-season surgery on that torn labrum. And basically what the labrum is, I've had reconstruction on my labrum, and it was my throwing shoulder way long time ago back in my youth. And I know what it feels like to have to living with that before you have that surgery. It's sore, it hurts, it's swollen, and you always have the sense that it's going to just pop out of your socket at any given time. Now you're playing in the National Football League, and it's got to be playing in his psyche. And I know he's putting the brace on. It's a bulky brace. It's really restrictive for his torso, and it's definitely having an impact on his accuracy. We've seen it since he got hurt. Really, a lot of balls sailed on him today. This is a beat-up Cleveland team. They got a number of injuries, not only with Baker Mayfield. He's going to have to play through this for the rest of the season. It's not going to get any better for him, but Chubb didn't look like the Nick Chubb that we were used to seeing. He's coming off his calf injury, definitely didn't run the football well. Only 16 attempts for 61 yards, but also Landry's beat up, so is OBJ. This is a banged-up offense right now for the Cleveland Browns, and we know what their identity is. They want to run the football. Pittsburgh knows that too, and we're able to really stuff the run. 23 carries today collectively for the Cleveland Browns, less than 100 yards, only 96 yards on the ground. That's the recipe to be able, if you can stop the run, you're going to be able to beat the Cleveland Browns. That's exactly what Pittsburgh was able to do, holding the Cleveland Browns at home to just 10 points. Great effort out of the Pittsburgh defense today, and then Big Ben made some throws on third down to move the sticks when they needed it and made some plays. Really questionable call early in the first half, or maybe in the second quarter, where it was actually towards the latter part, around the 2-minute warning, where instead of kicking the field goal to go up 6-3 and maybe go into the half with the lead for the Pittsburgh Steelers, Mike Tomlin decides to roll out his place kicker to see if they can fake a field goal inside the red zone. Kicker gets tagged. He gets a concussion. He's knocked out of the game. So they went without a kicker for the second half, and it impacted their kickoff. It also impacted how they had to manage the game when you're talking about going for PATs or field goals. Fortunately for Tomlin, they were able to play through that because of the defense. Not going to probably have a lot of criticism for that, but really interesting play call to go for that fake field goal late in that second quarter.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate for Browns and their fans. This team is absolutely decimated by injury. Jack Conklin along the offensive line and Denzel Ward, two more that were not able to complete that game today. They will travel within the state of Ohio to face the Cincinnati Bengals next week in Cincinnati. The Steelers will be at home on Monday night hosting the Chicago Bears. Pittsburgh was made a 5.5-point favorite in that game way back in June, and that might be pretty darn close to what we see this number come out as in Week 9. The San Francisco 49ers, James, they had really been struggling. They're very injured. They'd lost 4 in a row. They go into Chicago and they pull out a very much needed win to move to 3-4 on the season, and this is their first victory since Week 2, 33-22, the final. They started out slow. They actually trailed 13-9 at the half, but Jimmy G and Deebo Samuel cranked it up in the second half, and you talked about it earlier. What was it, Trey Lance at quarterback? No, it was Jimmy G. He ran 2 in for scores for San Francisco, and that was absolutely a much-needed win for this team. They win and cover as 4.5-point favorites on the road.
Yeah, I was on the Bears side in this game, and They had the lead at the half. Should have had more points. They had left a lot of points out there on the field going for field goals, and field goals are for losers, Brady. We know that, and they settled for too many field goals in that first half and into the third quarter as well. Opening drive in the third quarter, they go down, can't execute in the red zone and have to kick, and you're going to get that out of Justin Fields, young quarterback there. And Khalil Herbert had a good game until he got nailed and was knocked out for a while out of that game. Sensational run for a touchdown in that fourth quarter by Justin Fields. Crazy run on, I think it was a fourth down. He had to make something out of nothing. You can see the athleticism there, but that's as a running quarterback. Still a lot of work to be done when we're talking about polishing his throwing acumen. A lot of potential there for Justin Fields, but a work in progress for the Chicago Bears, and ultimately just wore down that defense in that second half with San Francisco being able to, led by Jimmy G on the ground, to take command in that fourth quarter.
Yeah, that was pretty cool by Shanahan. We don't see that often. Again, that's what we expect out of Trey Lance, but really utilized Jimmy very well. The Niners are back at Levi Stadium next Sunday hosting the Arizona Cardinals, and this becomes a very interesting game. The Arizona Cardinals lose their first game last Thursday. The Niners win their first game in 6 weeks, and they just played in Arizona in Week 5, and that was a very competitive game. It will be interesting to see what they do in the rematch coming up in Week 9 in Santa Clara. We're back with more of the Pro Football Blitz in just a moment. Stick with us. It's VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
I want to get back to kissing the cheeks of my grandbabies, making Sunday dinner with a house full of family and lots of laughs.
COVID-19 has changed how we live and how we feel. But now, there are vaccines. And they are the very first step that let us get back to what we miss most. It's okay to have questions.
Is it safe?
Should I wait? Now, get the facts. Visit GetVaccineAnswers.org so you can make an informed decision when vaccines are available to you. Brought to you by the Ad Council.
You know the final score. Now listen to the NFL podcast that tells you why it happened.
Do they have a skill or trait that is going to allow them to survive?
Dan Orlovsky, Scott Pioli, and me, Bob Wischusen. We're tape heads, going inside the coaching tape and giving fans the answers.
Regardless of what the hierarchy is, folks need to be servants to the head coach.
Listen to Tape Heads on the iHeartRadio app, on Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
I'm Sam Rappaport, host of Earnin' It, a new podcast about women who are breaking the NFL's glass ceilings.
It's not like I'm doing this to bust up the good old boys club.
This story will be told by NFL head coaches, owners, and of course, the women themselves. I even go in with Commissioner Roger Goodell.
I didn't curse once, did I?
Check out Earnin' It starting November 9th on the iHeartRadio app or wherever you get your podcasts.